It's been 2 years since the release of Dune Part One, a movie that proved that while Hollywood may be dead, cinema is not. Part 1 provided an introduction to a unique science fiction world through the vision of director Denis Villeneuve. If Star Wars is a family friendly science fiction meant to appeal to a wider audience, Dune is a more mature, hard science fiction that isn't afraid to show science fiction can be taken seriously while incorporating religious undertones. Dune Part 2 is not just a sequel to Part 1, but is, as stated in the title, a second part to a movie that was split in half. The question is, does Part 2 provide a fitting conclusion? And more importantly, does Part 2 live up to the hype? Dune Part 2 literally takes place hours or a couple days after the end of Dune Part 1. We are introduced to Princess Arvelon Corino, recording in her journal that she believes Paul Atreides is still alive on Arrakis, while her father, the Emperor of the known universe, remains dispirited. On Arrakis, Paul and his mother, the Lady Jessica, flee deeper into the desert with Stilgar, Chani, and the Fremen as they escape the Harkonnen who return to the planet. The Fremen are divided between those who believe in a prophecy that predicts Paul is a Messiah who will lead the Fremen to paradise, and those who believe the prophecy is a lie. Paul decides to train as a Fremen in hopes of getting revenge for his father's death, and joins the Fremen in attacking the Harkonnen, and Lady Jessica decides to become the new Reverend Mother of the Fremen, in hopes of persuading the entire Fremen population into believing in the prophecy. Meanwhile, Robin and the rest of the Harkonnen forces attempt to re-establish control over Arrakis, but fail due to the Fremen rebellion. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen replaces Rabin with his psychotic nephew, Fade Ratha, as the new ruler of Arrakis. Also, the Bene Gesserit are controlling the politics of the Imperium for their own purposes. These three factions ultimately collide when Paul accepts his fate as a Messiah, leading to a climactic confrontation that will not only change Arrakis, but the known universe forever. While Dune Part 2 is the second half of a much longer movie, Part 1 and Part 2 of Dune feel different. Whereas Part 1 focuses more on the world building and introduction to the main plot, Part 2 focuses more on the characters and politics of Dune. Paul is a complex character, afraid to embrace his destiny as a messiah for the Fremen. Paul avoids the notion of being a messiah, but as he learns the ways of the Fremen and retaliates against the Harkonnen, it slowly comes inevitable that fate slowly draws closer and he must become the messiah he fears to be in order to free the Fremen. Paul is a tragic hero, one you rarely see on the big screen. He is forced to embrace the power he possesses to free the Fremen, enact revenge against the Harkonnen, become the new emperor of the known universe, and pave the path to bring paradise to Arrakis at the cost of knowing he will bring a holy war to the galaxy in which millions will die in a jihad. Timothy Chalamet does an excellent job balancing the two sides of Paul. Paul is a quiet, stoic character, but when the time comes for him to become a leader, Timothy nails the character. Zendaya as Chani is the weakest character due to the actress's performance and role. Chani is Paul's love interest who teaches him in the way of the Fremen, and is the only Fremen who does not believe in the prophecy. Because of this, Chani can come off as annoying compared to the other characters. With the other characters, you forget they are played by actors and actresses. But with Chani, it's hard to ignore she's played by Zendaya, or MJ, from Tom Holland's Spider-Man trilogy. Also, I don't think it was the right choice to make her the only Fremen who doesn't believe in the prophecy. As for the rest of the cast, the performances were excellent, and no two characters were the same. Lady Jessica was strategic in using her role as a Reverend Mother to influence the Fremen. Gurney Halleck makes a small return, but is loyal to Paul as he too wants revenge for the death of House Atreides and his friends. Stilgar represents the radical believers of the prophecy, but is also a bit of a comedic relief, not in the way of making jokes, but in a more natural way. Vladimir Harkonnen and Rabin's roles were decreased much to my disappointment, but this allowed Fade Rather to steal the light when it comes to the Harkonnens. Austin Butler as Fade is unrecognizable and does an excellent job portraying the character. Once again, what makes Dune stand out from other science fiction epics are the visuals and soundtrack. Whereas other science fictions tried to emulate or copy Star Wars, Denis Villeneuve made Dune have its own visual aesthetic, going for more simplified visuals while preserving the hard science of Dune. The sands of Arrakis, the industrial world of Giedi Prime, and even the brief time we see the Emperor's home world are visually different in architecture, geography, and style of clothing. While the movie may lack bright and diverse colors, the visuals and practical effects are spectacular, and the sceneries are stunning thanks to the limited and smart use of digital effects. A great example of this are the sandworms. Though the sandworms are completely computer generated, the use of constructed sets and practical effects gave visual effect artists time and focus to make the sandworms and other digital effects look realistic. As for the soundtrack, the music was composed by Hans Zimmer, and when Hans Zimmer scores music, you know it's going to be a banger. My only complaint is the pacing of the third act of the movie. Upon entering the third act, it felt like the movie was speed running events so we can get to the final conflict. The third act comprises of a battle between the Fremen, the Harkonnen, and the Emperor's army, and it felt a little rushed. The battle was less a battle and more of a massacre, and I would have liked to see more of what occurred rather than the highlights. Otherwise, it comes off as the Fremen steamrolling through both the Harkonnens and the Emperor's army, which is anticlimactic despite seeing the visual of the Fremen coming in riding on 3 sandworms. However, the movie did end with a cool knife duel that was well choreographed. Does Dune Part 2 live up to the hype? Many have compared Dune Part 2 to The Lord of the Rings The Two Towers, but I wouldn't say the movie is that big and epic. But don't let that downgrade the movie. Dune Part 2 is a cinematic masterpiece with stunning visuals and a subversive take on the Chosen One story. With Denis Villeneuve behind the wheel, Dune Part 2 can pave the way for a promising franchise that shows you can make a great movie without adhering to the woke agenda. On that note, I'm Deviant, and thanks for watching.